What's going on, family? This is Scrapbook Boxing, Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series. This is volume 3 of boxing articles. And we're looking at a World Light Heavyweight Championship contest between George Gardner to your left and Jack Root to your right. And what had happened with Jack Root? He had outgrew the middleweight division. And he had a very shrewd manager who was also a promoter. Now, you can't have that today because of the Muhammad Ali Act, but you had a lot of that going on back at that time. This is the early 1900s. And he was able to persuade the majority of sports writers to agree with him to open up another weight division. It would be called the light heavyweight division. And they wanted to scale that 175 pounds because at that time, the middleweight division was 158 pounds. It wasn't 160. So they set up a contest between Jack Root and Kid McCoy. He was known for having a corkscrew punch. And Jack Root would defeat Kid McCoy. And he would become the light heavyweight champion, but he wasn't the world light heavyweight champion. He had to take on George Gardner in order to make that happen. And that took place in 1903. So Jack Root was born May 26, 1876. He died June 10th, 1963 in Los Angeles, California. He stood 5 foot 10 inches and he weighed 155 to 172 pounds. He had a fighting career record of 55 total bouts, 47 wins, 28 knockouts, and he was stopped 3 times. He had 2 knockouts in 1897. Defeated Frank Craig, the Harlem Coffee Cooler, twice. Drew with middleweight champion Tommy Ryan. Fought Tommy West. Knocked out George Byers. Now, George Byers was a colored champion. He was an outstanding fighter. And he could fight. He was in the ring with George Gardner 5 times. 2 wins, 1 draw, and 2 losses. Became a lieutenant when he retired from boxing in the United States Army. Became a boxing instructor. He's a very, very good fighter, was Jack Root. As for George Gardner, he was born March 17th, 1877 in Ireland. He would relocate to Chicago, Illinois, where he would die July 8th, 1954. He stood 5 foot 11 inches and had a 155-pound frame and went up to 175 pounds. He was managed by Tom O'Rourke. Defeated fighters such as Billy Swift and Frank Craig, the Harlem Coffee Cooler, twice. George Byers and Jeff Fords, Peter Mayhaw, and Joe Walcott. Defeated him in 20 rounds and he lost to him in 20 rounds. Bob Armstrong, no contest. Marvin Hart, TKO'd him in 12 rounds. And that's how he was able to get that opportunity to face Jack Root for the light heavyweight championship of the world. He faced Jack Root August 18th, 1902, lost in a foul, 7 rounds. Then he faced him again July 4th, 1903, 12 rounds, and he stopped him in 12 rounds. Now, you heard me explain to you how the light heavyweight championship division was established. And it became, like I said once before, 1903, same year Jack Johnson had became the colored heavyweight champion when he defeated Denver Ed Martin. And Sam Langford had defeated lightweight champion Joe Gans. The promoter, Lou Houseman, who was the promoter and manager of Jack Root. And he was in control of the Chicago newspaper because he was a newspaper man at that time. And he managed Jack Root. And Jack Root has scored many victories in the middleweight division. Like I said, he had problems making the middleweight limit. He would always come in at 165 and drain himself. So he had an opportunity to move up to the new light heavyweight division that was established by 2 men. One was Lou Houseman. And the other man's name was James Cofforth. They were all sports editors at that time. April 22nd, 1903, Jack Root had faced Kid McCoy in Detroit, Michigan. It was a 10-round contest. Jack Root will become the new somewhat champion, if you will. He outpointed Kid McCoy. He had to face George Gardner. In July 4th, 1903, George Gardner had faced Jack Root. It was on an indoor arena in Canada. It was called the International Athletic Club. George Gardner had knocked out Jack Root for the light heavyweight championship belt. George Gardner was the first Irish-American fighter to win the undisputed championship belt in boxing history. Let's take a look at an article that will give you further detail on that fight. Now, I'm not sure if you can see this clearly. I'll get a little bit better vision for you. But in this article, it says George Gardner body blows beats Root. It was in the second round, or the second bout. They fought twice. And a great light heavyweight reversed defeat because George Gardner had lost to Jack Root their first fight. And defeat the rival hands 19 years ago. This is an article that was taking place 19 years when this was written. When Ryan had stopped Douglas, other famous old-time ring contests reviewed. So they're giving you somewhat of a perspective on what took place with that fight, George Gardner and Jack Root. Let's take a closer look. Now, to keep you up to speed as to what's happening right now, I'm showing you old articles, and I'll be going back as far as the 1700s. And as you can see here, George Gardner would defeat Jack Root. New York City, George Gardner, one of our old-time light heavyweight champions, defeated rival Jack Root. And I'm just scanning around here just to show you how this article was written. And Jack Root had injured his right hand. And that was what the newspapermen had written. So let's take a look at this actual article. And a matter quite similar to that in which Bob Martin, now Bob Martin was the AEF heavyweight champion, as you can see here. On that team, you had a fighter by the name of Gene Tunney. He was the light heavyweight champion of the AEF. And you also had Leo Patterson, who was a lightweight champion. He was a black fighter, and they all fought in the military. And the way that ran, it was almost like the Olympics. You went around different camps and you would challenge those fighters that was on those particular teams. And he recently defeated the veteran Frank Moran at the Boxing Dome. Now, Bob Martin had faced Frank Moran, and he defeated him. And here you have Bob Martin and Frank Moran. As you can see here, Bob Martin knocks out veteran Pittsburgher in the 7th round, AEF champion, in line for the chance at George Carpentier and Jack Dempsey. So Bob Martin was the AEF heavyweight champion. Frank Moran is to your left and Bob Martin is to your right. And I just wanted to take out a little time of this video to show you Bob Martin and Frank Moran. Let's get back to the other scrapbook and continue on with our conversation. So we're back at the other scrapbook. I pulled out another scrapbook just to show you that. The New York George Gardner, one of our old-time light heavyweights, I finished his rival with Jack Root 19 years ago. And on the 18th day of August 1902, Gardner and Root had met in the ring Salt Lake City. This is in Utah. It's the home of Jack Dempsey. Now, what they're talking about, Jack Root and George Gardner faced each other 5 times. Excuse the blur. That was their first time they fought each other in 1902. But the light heavyweight championship contest wouldn't take place until 1903, and that's the fight we're actually talking about and discussing today. I'm just trying to find something interesting to show you here. But this is basically the article that explains the fight that took place in 1903. And this article doesn't have an actual round-by-round breakdown. I'm getting a lot of blur here, but I just wanted to give you an idea of what had taken place between these two men, George Gardner and Jack Root. So at least you learned how the light heavyweight championship division was established, who the first fighters were in those divisions to become champion. So I'm going to end it here. Thanks for hanging there with me. Scrapbook Boxing, Museum of the Forgotten Fisticuffs series. All great fights and all great fighters will never be forgotten on my channel. Salute to my subscribers. Salute to my viewers. Salute to George Gardner. And salute to Jack Root. Until next time, thanks for hanging in there with me. Peace.